into 2-star territory. So not only are you offensive, but you're also weird. Howdy my loves, it's Julie here, and today we are going to be explaining my incredibly specific and totally scientific proven way that I rate my books. A very cutthroat rating system. My friends are really confused by it. I think because I do it in increments of 0.25, and it irks me to no end that Goodreads does not give at least half points available. What I do in my Goodreads reviews is that I will literally write in my own review of it with the actual rating that I give it. And so I wanted to go over my different tiers today. Let's go through each of them one by one. There's a lot of different categories, and I'm going to be providing examples for each category so that you guys can get a feel of exactly what I mean. Top category, we have 5 stars. I am very sparse about giving 5 stars. So really what I mean by 5 stars is you're giving 6 stars. This is God tier to me. I believe last year I gave maybe 4 or 5 books 5 stars, and I read about 60. And the year before that, I think I read 70 to 80 books, and I also only gave like 4 or 5 books 5 stars. This means I have not stopped thinking about the book. I love the universe that I'm in. I thought the writing was great. I thought the plot was amazing, and I thought that the characters, and usually because I'm a romance girly, the romance was amazing. And I'm a rereader. Usually those 5-star books I revisit when I reread all the time. And an example of this is the Fourth Wing series, but in particular, Onyx Storm. I thought Onyx Storm was a 5-star read. If you guys aren't familiar with Rebecca Yarros's game, just to give you a little bit of a summary, her book is a fantasy series. It is placed in a war-torn, very war-focused environment. Dragon riders are the defenders of the country. You have a girl, her name's Violet. Her mom, who is the general of the Dragon Riders, forces her, instead of becoming a scribe who takes down the history, makes her go into the dragon riding school, which is very dangerous. You can't really flunk out of dragon riding school. You either die or you're chosen by a dragon who deems you worthy, all the while you're in school learning how to be a very efficient weapon for this army. Ever since I read Onyx Storm, haven't stopped thinking about it. Not a day goes by that I don't think about that series. I absolutely love it. It's a God tier series for me, and every single book in the series I've rated 5 stars. I read both Fourth Wing and Iron Flame in the same year. Those were 2 out of my 4 5-star reads for the year. Highly, highly loved in my book. I don't know why, but I never give a book 4.75 stars. I either think it's 4.5 or it's 5. It's gotta be one or the other. 4.5 means that the book was incredibly enjoyable. It was so juicy. There was something about it. Really enjoyed the experience of. Almost to a 5-star, but it just wasn't that 5-star feeling. There's a feeling I get about halfway that I'm like, this is just a 5-star. And sometimes that doesn't happen. No matter how enjoyable a book is, no matter how much fun I'm having reading it, it just doesn't give me that feeling. Now, my example for this is All Roads Lead Here by Mariana Zapata. Now, it is very rare for me not to give a Mariana Zapata book 5 stars. Now, that is not to say I didn't love All Roads Lead Here. I loved it. I loved it so much. There was something about this one, and I think because maybe the formula was just a little bit different with this one. I really love Mariana Zapata books for the fact that they are slow burn romances, and her other niche is Grumpy Sunshine. This was almost a slow burn, but usually what happens is that the conflict, like the third act, can't even say breakup because they're not really together usually, but the third act conflict is usually due to the fact that both parties have not expressed their feelings for each other, and I like that. But in this book, that wasn't the conflict. I won't spoil it for you, but I think that's what made me pause at giving this a 5 stars. But this is such a good book. I really do recommend it, especially if you're into single dad books. This book is about a girl who just got out of a 10-year relationship. She's having a really rough go of it, and she decides to move back to her hometown in Colorado. There, she rents an apartment from a dad. Turns out the apartment was put up for sale by his son without his knowledge. Girl somehow convinces him to let her stay for a month, and over the course of that month, they actually become really good friends, and she ends up becoming close with the dad and his son. It just didn't give me that 5-star feeling, but I absolutely recommend it. It's amazing. 4.25 stars is the next tier. Now, there's just something about this that it was never going to hit a 5-star, but it was an amazing read. It was so much fun, but usually it's not that there's something lacking. There's something in it that prevents it from being of 5 stars. A good example for me of this is Caught Up by Liz Tom Ford. I'm sensing a pattern here, actually. This is another single dad romance that I love. I reread it, play on the nanny single dad trope. This is a baseball romance. It's about Kai Rhodes, one of the amazing book boyfriends that Liz Tom Ford has created for us. And this book is about him basically just having a really tough time finding a nanny for his son. His son Max is a couple months old. He didn't even know that the mom was pregnant. She dropped the kid off at his doorstep, and all of a sudden he was a dad. She didn't want to be his parent, and now he's a single dad while trying to be a baseball player. His manager basically says, you know what, you've gave me such a hard time. I am going to hire my own daughter, who is a chef and who is taking a break from cooking for the summer, to be your nanny. She has no child experience. She's super wild, carefree. I just absolutely love this book because of the found family in it. It is not just a romance between the dad and the nanny. The love between all three of them, between Max and Miller and Kai, it's just top tier. I thought that the conflict in it was a little strange, and there were some aspects of the romance that I felt were not something that I was super into. So while I did love the family aspect of it, I reread those parts so much. I felt the romance was deterring a little bit, just the way that it unfolded. Insta lust is not my fave. Now the next level that we are going to go to is a 4. 4 stars means that it was amazing. It was really great. It was a great read. I probably wouldn't reread it. That's probably a very big note I would say about 4 stars, is that I probably would not reread it. A lot of my favorite books, I read them physically and then I download them on my phone, and then when I want to have some serotonin throughout the day, I'll go back to my favorite romance scenes, my favorite family scenes. 4 stars probably means that I had a good time in the moment, but I feel no need to revisit it. A good example of this is First Time Caller by BK Borison. I just read this read this month. I thought it was really cute, and once again, this is a single mom. Wow, when I was setting this up, I did not see a pattern here. This is a single mom romance. Super hardworking. Her and her best friend got pregnant at, I think 16, I believe. Knew that they were not going to be in love with each other forever. And so they decided to really strongly co-parent their child. But her best friend got married. He has a husband and they live next door, and she's been alone all of this time. The kid, I believe, is like 11 or 12, something like that. And basically she knows of this radio station love interest hosts. The love interest really has been down on love recently. He's supposed to run in a radio talk show that gives advice to lonely people. The little girl calls into the radio station and she's like, I really need help with my mom. I believe that she's unhappy and I think a boyfriend would help her out with that. And this clip of them talking goes viral, and suddenly everyone is invested in this mom finding her love. She agrees to go on to the radio show where she talks about her adventures into finding love, and he kind of mentors her on that. I had a good time while it was happening. I thought that the romance was cute. Again, I'm such a sucker for those like familial moments. I thought that the relationship between the dad, the mom, and the boyfriend, and the stepdad, the main character, was a very lovable person. But I would never go back and reread this. Like, this is something that was an experience for me to have, but there was no need for me to repeat it. But that didn't mean that I didn't enjoy it at the moment. I thought it was good. Next level is 3.75. When I have like vanilla ice cream and I get some hot fudge and sprinkles on the top. Like, there's some elements that made you a little bit more elevated, but you were just good. And an example of this, I would say, is Wild Side by Elsie Silver. Again, this is a read that I had read this year. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, this is a single mom romance. Oh, okay, I think that's the last one, but damn, in case you didn't know what tropes I like. Wild Side by Elsie Silver. I was a little disappointed to give this 3.75 stars actually, because the rest of the series was really great. This was my least favorite by far. Tabitha ends up actually getting what she thinks is uncontested custody of her nephew now that her sister has died. Reese, her sister's landlord, actually was given custody of her nephew, and she's incredibly confused because as far as she knew, her sister barely knew this man. He's from the US, he's down in Florida, and she's in Canada. And he is actually a pro wrestler, and he doesn't want to let anybody know that. He realizes, hey, actually, I would like for all of us to live in Canada, but I am not a citizen. They decide to get married, so it's a marriage of convenience, and they decide to co-parent this little guy together. Sometimes the romance was good. There was some elements shining through. I thought that the moments with Milo were really cute at certain times, but it was just an okay story. I didn't really fully buy their romance completely. I did love the marriage of convenience, the forced proximity element of it. I do love those tropes. Ultimately, I thought it was good, and there were some hot fudge and sprinkles in there that made it a little better. 3.5 stars. It's good. That's pretty much it though. That's all I can really say about it. Like, it's an option. So an example of this is My December Darling. Now this is a novella written by Lauren Asher. The two main characters kind of had a dislike to lovers going on. The female main character, her sister's getting married to her ex-boyfriend. And I use the term ex-boyfriend very loosely because they really only went on a couple dates. She's totally fine that her sister is dating her ex-boyfriend. But that ex-boyfriend has a best friend. And now the best friend is the best man in their wedding, and she's the maid of honor. It was fun to read, and I think this 3.5 category is a very good spot to put a lot of novellas. How good can a novella really be? Like, with the exception of like The Assassin's Blade or something like that, like there's very limited ratings that I feel you can give a novella because it just doesn't have not enough space, not enough character development that can happen in a novella. Enjoyed it for what it was, but there was no need for me to revisit it again. 3.25. Now this is getting to a little bit of a scary place. I would say that 3.25 is like, I hope you're hungry for nothing. I would say that for both 3.25 and 3 actually. It was really fine. So for 3.25 stars, I put Leather and Lark. If you guys are unaware of the Ruinous Love trilogy, the first one I would say was the best, which is Butcher and Blackbird. Leather and Lark follows the same premise, which is that the two main characters are serial killers. So it's a dark romance. So if you're not into that, maybe steer clear of this. But Leather and Lark features the best friend slash brother of the main character in the first book. Leather and Lark basically is a marriage of convenience, and she comes from a very rich family. Muffin Company family, but that's just like a front for like more sinister things. They think that their family is being hunted by her best friend's husband's family. The man that she ends up marriage of conveniencing with is a contracted killer. However, he's not the one hunting her family, and they consider her family wiping them out. And she does not want to hurt her best friend. So they get married, and meanwhile, she is also kind of a serial killer. She calls it a multiple deleter. She has a very sparkling personality. I'm not kidding about that. She puts her trophies in snow globes. While there were some elements of enjoyment in there, like, you know, the dark humor was really funny to me. I wanted it to be like book one, but those elements just weren't there for me. So I was just waiting for something to happen. The next one is 3 stars. Now this one, again, middle of the way. There was nothing that hurt my feelings about it. It's spectacular. This is a novella written by Stephanie Garber. And I was just expecting more from it. Like, given how fantastical Caraval is, I just love that universe. Like, the idea of this circus that is influenced by actual magic. I felt like that whole series could have really pushed the envelope, if I'm being totally honest. But I can't really tell you the main plot of this because it is a spoiler for this series. But basically, there's like magic involved. It is involving one of the main couples from the Caraval series. Felt like it was Stephanie Garber acting out a fetish that she has, and I will not expand on that further. Okay, now we are getting into the 2-star category. 2 stars means that you've offended me in some way. 2 stars means that you're starting to offend me with your presence. Really don't give out 2 stars very often, and when I do, it means something. A good example of this is A Love Song for Ricky Wilde. I read this last year, and basically the premise is that the female main character is in New York and she's trying to open a flower shop business, and the main guy is also in New York but at a different time. So he's actually from the Jim Crow era. You see them flash back and forth, but somehow he's also in the present. The reason that this book was offending me, you could not convince me that these two people would ever be in love with each other if not for the fact they were soulmates. I don't think they ever had a real conversation about anything other than the fact that they kept running into each other. This was like supposed to be a great romance, and they were declaring their love for each other, and I'm like, you don't know this man. 2.5, we're getting worse. There's more columns of offensiveness, and a good example of this is The Sweetest Oblivion. I know that a lot of people love the Made Men series. I read both books 1 and 2 because I'm stupid and I gave it a second chance. If you would like to experience the patriarchy in book form about, I don't know, 50 years ago, go ahead and read this series. It was actually offending me how much they degrade women and how much women have no say in this book. For the fact that they were romanticizing the main man who also had these opinions made me upset. I don't want a main male character in a romance that generally women are consuming to be an a-hole about women. Parts of the plot that I was peeling through, and it's also a marriage of convenience, so I was like going through it quickly, but there were aspects of it that really offended me. Now we're getting into 2-star territory. So not only are you offensive, but you're also weird. And I put Stephen King's The Shining here. I'm not a horror person either, and I didn't watch the movie of this, so I went into this completely blind. If you don't know the premise of The Shining, it's basically like this man has a temper. He lost his job because he beat up a child at his school. And so the only job that he can find is being a hotel like keeper. But this hotel is known for being haunted, and the last person who did this job killed themselves and their entire family. So they're shut up in this hotel the whole winter season, and he slowly starts to go crazy. It offended me in the sense that it was weirdly sexual, despite the fact that one of the main characters was a child. Also, I thought the plot was offensive in its stupidity. The motivation and the internal dialogue of the main character just did not make sense to me. I was not scared at all. I was just weirded out by the different things that were happening. I was just confused and irritated most of the time reading it. Then we have 1 star. Now between 2 and 1 star, I don't have increments. If I hate it, I hate it. 1 star is I hated it. I'm sad that I wasted time reading you, and I'm sad that you exist. And there's only one book I've ever given 1 star, and that is Every Summer After. I'm so sorry, Carly Fortune. I'm so sorry if that's your favorite book. I'll give you a brief summary, but I will not spoil the thing that made it 1 star because you just have to read it to know. I don't want to spoil it too much because it's the main conflict in the story. Every Summer After is basically a second chance romance. When she was a child, and this book flips back and forth between the summers when she was a child and her adulthood. Her family bought a lake house that was next to 2 boys. One of the boys became her best friend, and she fell in love with him over the course of their childhood. You don't know why, but 10 years later they have lost contact, and she hasn't spoken to him since. And all of a sudden the older brother calls her out of the blue and says that the mom had died, and would you like to come back for the funeral? So she goes back, she reconnects with her first love, and they try to come to terms with why they lost contact and if they can work through their relationship. I hated it for the conflict. I knew it was coming, still hated it. And I know that that's a personal problem, but there's just some hard limits in books that I cannot get over, and you could not convince me that it needs to be in a book. Flashbacks were like maybe okay, but they weren't anything spectacular. I do not think this couple's going to last. I think that it is crazy that they got together. I'm not convinced that they are still in love with each other, and I'm not convinced that they can ever work through what happened. I don't think they should, and I am a hater. Those were all of my very specific ratings. Let me know how you guys rate your books, if you just go the Goodreads method or if you have something more specific like I do. These are all, of course, scientifically proven and are correct. I love you guys. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Look at her style from the street. Look at her style from the ghetto. This I will never make it big.